In 1980, a rising rock band vanished without a trace. No calls, no sightings, just silence. Their tour bus disappeared along with them, fueling wild theories. For 22 years, the mystery deepened. Then the Navy dredged the ocean and uncovered a haunting secret buried beneath the waves. The sea was calm that morning. The sky was painted in soft blues and grays as the Navy's deep-sea team prepared their equipment. A robotic submersible, fitted with cameras and sonar, was gently lowered into the choppy Atlantic waters. No one on the ship knew what to expect that day, but they all felt something in their bones. Something was waiting below. As the camera descended through layers of darkness, it finally landed on a strange shape half buried in the sand. The crew gasped. A tour bus. Rusty, sunken, and oddly intact. Time had eaten away at the paint, but the logo still showed faintly under layers of algae and barnacles. The Electric Howl, a rock band that had vanished without a trace 22 years ago. Inside the bus, things were frozen in time. Cracked drumsticks lay on the floor. A shattered guitar leaned against a broken seat. Empty soda cans rolled in slow motion as the current pushed them gently. But the most chilling discovery was further back. 2 skeletons were found seated, still buckled in. Their clothes, tattered and faded, bore band patches with names no one had spoken in years: Mason Reddick and Tyler Voss. Forensics later confirmed what everyone feared: both had gunshot wounds to the head. It wasn't an accident. It was murder. News spread like wildfire. The band that had vanished in 1980 had finally been found. Reporters swarmed the coast. Fans lit candles near old concert halls. Radios played their biggest hit, "Don't Say Goodbye," over and over again. But in a small town several miles away, a 63-year-old woman named Clara Winslow dropped her teacup when she saw the footage on TV. Her hands trembled. Her heart raced. Her son, Landon, had been the band's drummer. And now, the ocean had whispered a dark secret. The tour bus hadn't simply crashed. It had been driven into the deep, with its passengers shot and silenced. Clara clutched the faded photo of her son she kept on her windowsill. 22 years had passed, but her heart never stopped hoping. Now the nightmare was coming back. And somewhere, in the shadows, someone knew the truth, and they weren't done with her yet. The sun peeked through gray clouds as Clara Winslow sat at her small kitchen table, staring at a single cupcake with one lonely candle. It was her 63rd birthday, but there was no celebration, no visitors, no laughter. Just quiet. And memories. A framed photograph of a young man with curly hair and a cheeky smile sat next to her. Landon. Her only son. Her heart still whispered his name like a prayer. He had vanished 22 years ago, and not a day passed without her thinking of him. He had been so full of life, always tapping his fingers on the kitchen table like it was a drum set. Always dreaming of big stages and bright lights. Clara reached for the matchbox, lit the candle, and closed her eyes. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Please let me see Landon again. Just once. Let me know what happened." As she opened her eyes, a tear rolled down her cheek. She had made that same wish every year since 1980. And every year, it went unanswered. She picked up her old knitting needles, trying to push away the ache in her chest. But just as she was about to begin a new row, the doorbell rang. It startled her. No one came to visit anymore. Clara slowly walked to the door, her heartbeat quickening. Outside stood a tall man in a dark coat, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. He looked too clean, too calm, too wrong. "Mrs. Winslow?" he asked smoothly. Clara hesitated. "Yes? I'm Silas Moreau," he said with a cold smile. "I knew your son." Clara froze. Her voice caught in her throat. You knew Landon?" Silas nodded. "He worked for me, after the band disappeared. We have unfinished business. And I'm here because that business is now your problem." Before she could respond, two men stepped out of the bushes. Large, silent, and mean-looking. Clara's heart dropped into her stomach. Silas's eyes glinted like ice. Landon owes me. A lot. He made promises he didn't keep. Now you'll help pay his debt. Or you'll both suffer the consequences. The candle on her cupcake still flickered in the kitchen behind her. Clara hadn't even blown it out yet. The night felt colder than usual as Clara sat in her small living room, the shadows of the streetlights stretching long across the floor. She couldn't stop trembling. Silas Morrow's words echoed in her mind like a dark drumbeat. Landon owed him money, and now Clara was tangled in something terrible. Her fingers nervously twisted the edge of a faded blanket. The house was quiet, except for the ticking of an old clock and the sound of her own shallow breathing. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees. But Clara's thoughts screamed inside her head, what kind of man is Silas? How could Landon get involved with something so dangerous? Suddenly, the doorbell rang again. Clara jumped and clutched her chest. She wasn't expecting anyone. Who could it be at this hour? She crept to the door, her feet silent on the worn wooden floor. Peering through the peephole, she saw a figure standing outside, tall, dark, and motionless. Without thinking, Clara opened the door. Mrs. Winslow, the man said softly, stepping inside before she could stop him. His voice was calm but chilling, like a snake ready to strike. This Silas Morrow. I warned you that I'll back. Before Clara could protest, two large men appeared behind him. Their faces were hard and cold. They didn't say a word. They simply stared. Silas's lips curled into a cruel smile. Your son, Landon, worked for me. He owes me a great debt. And now so do you. Clara's heart pounded. I don't know anything about this, she whispered, voice cracking. Please, I want to help, but I don't know how. Silas shook his head slowly. You don't have a choice. You'll sell the packages we give you. Each one pays off Landon's debt. If you refuse... He paused, eyes darkening. You and your son will suffer. Fear froze Clara in place. She glanced at the window, thinking of escape, but the men were already closing in. A scarf was forced over her mouth and tied tightly behind her head. The world spun. She was no longer in control. As the car engine roared to life, Clara clung to one thought. I have to survive. I have to find Landon. The night swallowed them whole. Clara's head ached as she woke up on a cold, metal floor. The sharp scent of gasoline and mold stung her nose. Her hands were tied behind her back with something rough, and her mouth was dry. She tried to sit up but felt dizzy. The dim light above her flickered, buzzing softly. It looked like she was in a warehouse, abandoned, dirty, and far from anything familiar. Voices echoed somewhere in the distance. Then footsteps. Heavy ones. The door creaked open, and Silas Morrow stepped inside, slow and calm, like he owned the place. He held something in his hand, a small wooden frame. Clara's eyes widened. It was her photo of Landon. The one that sat by her kitchen window. The glass was cracked, and the edge was chipped. Silas looked at it, then at Clara. Such a sweet face, he said mockingly. Your son had charm. He also had poor judgment. That charm got him into my world. That poor judgment cost him everything. He dropped the frame. It shattered against the concrete. Clara flinched. Silas crouched in front of her. You're going to help repay what he owes. You'll do what I say, when I say it. Sell what I give you. No questions. No mistakes. He reached into a black duffel bag and pulled out several small, clear bags filled with white powder. This, he said, is what keeps my business running. These little beauties are worth more than your house. Clara's stomach turned. She shook her head. I won't. He slammed his hand on the wall beside her, cutting her off. Yes, you will, he growled. Because your son is alive. Barely. But if you want to keep him that way, you'll cooperate. Her breath caught. Landon is alive? Silas smiled. He's in bad shape. But he's breathing. You help me, and he stays that way. You don't? Well, I think you understand. He stood and snapped his fingers. One of the men untied her and shoved a worn backpack into her arms. You start tonight, Silas said. We'll be watching. Clara's hands shook as she looked down at the bag. Drugs. Lies. Fear. And somewhere in the dark, Landon. She hadn't seen him in 22 years. But now, she'd do anything, to get him back. Even if it meant walking into the very heart of danger. Clara stood at the edge of a crumbling sidewalk, the backpack clutched tightly in her hands. The city lights buzzed above her, casting long, twisted shadows that made everything look strange and dangerous. She had never felt so alone. She looked around. Across the street stood a rundown building with broken windows and peeling paint. A neon sign flickered above the door. Tito's Tavern. That was the place Silas had pointed to on the map he shoved in her face. That was where she had to make her first delivery. Clara's legs felt like jelly as she crossed the street. Every step felt wrong. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but a mother's heart pushed her forward. If Landon was really alive, no matter the cost, she had to reach him. She had to save him. Inside the tavern, the air was thick with smoke and sweat. Loud music played from an old jukebox, and a group of rough-looking men crowded around a pool table. No one noticed Clara as she walked in. She didn't belong there, and she knew it. She spotted the contact. A man in a leather jacket with a snake tattoo across his neck sat in the corner, nursing a beer. Silas had described him in detail. Clara approached, her breath shaky. The man didn't look up. You Clara? She nodded, too afraid to speak. He held out his hand. Bag. She slowly handed him the backpack. He opened it, checked the contents, and zipped it shut without a word. Then, from under the table, he slid a small envelope across to her. Payment, he grunted. Same time next week. Clara took it with trembling fingers. As she turned to leave, the man said something that made her freeze. Your son was good at this. Too good. That's what got him in trouble. Clara swallowed hard. She didn't respond. She just walked out, her heartbeat pounding like a drum in her ears. Outside, the wind had picked up. It felt colder, meaner. She clutched the envelope tightly, feeling like she had just sold a piece of her soul. But she had no choice. Not if Landon was still out there. As she walked home in the dark, her thoughts raced. Who had her son become? And how deep did this nightmare go? She was now part of it. And there was no turning back. The following evening, Clara locked her front door, drew the curtains, and sat on the couch, the envelope of money still unopened in her lap. She hadn't slept much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Silas's cold smile, and her son's face, younger, full of life, frozen in memory. She still didn't know if she could believe Silas. What if it was all a lie? What if Landon wasn't alive at all? She reached for the old box she kept under the coffee table, filled with newspaper clippings, photos, and cassette tapes of Landon's band, the Electric Howl. As she lifted the lid, a small photograph slipped out. It was Landon and his best friend Eli Carter, both laughing, arms around each other, their faces glowing under stage lights. Clara touched the photo gently. Eli had disappeared too. Everyone thought they'd both drowned in the ocean with the band's tour bus. But now, maybe they hadn't. A loud knock at the back door made Clara jump. She moved cautiously, peeking through the curtain. A man in a hoodie stood in the yard, his back turned. Her heart raced. Go away, she whispered through the glass, but he didn't move. Then, slowly, the man turned around. Clara gasped. Eli? She breathed. The man stepped forward, pulling the hood down. It was him, older, thinner, but unmistakably Eli Carter. His eyes were sharp, alert, full of worry. And something else, fear. Clara quickly unlocked the door and pulled him inside. Eli! I thought you were dead? He said softly. Yeah, I know. That's what everyone thinks. Her hands trembled as she touched his face. Landon, is he really alive? Eli nodded, glancing around nervously. Barely. They've got him. Silas, and worse people than him. Landon tried to get out. They shot him. He's in a coma. Clara's knees nearly gave out. Oh God! Eli grabbed her shoulders. He didn't want this life. We didn't choose it. We were forced in. Your brother Jasper, he started it all. He sold us to Silas. Clara's mouth dropped open. Jasper? My brother? Eli's voice dropped to a whisper. Clara, you're in danger. They're using you. You have to be careful. And you need to decide something fast. Are you going to run? Clara looked at him, heart pounding. No, she whispered. I'm going to fight. The rain poured hard against the roof, each drop sounding like a warning. Clara sat across from Eli in her dimly lit kitchen. The clock ticked slowly, but her thoughts raced faster than ever. Her brother Jasper. She hadn't heard from him in years. He had always been the wild one, chasing money and trouble like a moth to flame. But to think he had something to do with Landon's disappearance, her only son, was too much to bear. Eli sipped from a chipped mug of tea Clara had made, his eyes scanning every window, every shadow. He was still jumpy, like he expected someone to burst through the door any second. You said Jasper sold you and Landon, Clara said quietly, her voice shaking. What do you mean? Eli sighed. After the band got popular, Jasper started managing our money. He said he could multiply it. Landon trusted him. We all did. But it was a trap. He looked at the floor. Jasper borrowed money from some very bad people. When he couldn't pay it back, he offered us instead. Me, Landon, and the others. He said we could work it off. Eli's voice hardened. But what he didn't say was that we'd never get out. Clara clutched her hands tightly. The tour bus, that night you all vanished, what happened? Eli looked up, eyes full of pain. It wasn't an accident. They staged it. Shot the driver, pushed the bus off the cliff. They left 2 of the guys inside, Trent and Mason, already dead. The rest of us were taken to a ship. Disappeared, just like that. Clara's breath hitched. Landon tried to escape 3 times. Eli continued. The last time, they shot him. He's been in a coma ever since. They move him from place to place so no one finds him. Clara stared at the flickering candle between them. The flame danced like her heart, fragile, flickering, but still burning. I have to find him, she said at last. I have to see my son. Eli nodded. I'll help you. But we need to move fast. Silas isn't patient. And if Jasper knows you're poking around. He didn't finish the sentence. The sound of a car pulling up outside made them both freeze. They weren't safe. Not anymore. Clara and Eli ducked low behind the kitchen counter as headlights swept across the curtains. A dark car had pulled up outside, its engine purring like a predator waiting to pounce. Clara's heart pounded in her ears. She couldn't breathe. Eli peeked through the corner of the curtain. It's them, he whispered. Silas's men. Clara's hands shook. How did they find us so fast? They're everywhere, Eli said grimly. That's how they keep control, watching, listening, always one step ahead. They heard footsteps outside. Then a quiet knock on the door. Not a loud bang, not yelling, just a soft, slow knock. That made it even worse. Mrs. Winslow? Came a voice. We need to speak with you. Now. Eli pointed toward the basement door. Come on. They'll break in if we don't answer, but we can get out through the storm hatch in the back. They slipped into the basement and tiptoed through the darkness. Dust clung to the walls. Boxes of old memories were stacked high. Landon's baby shoes, school trophies, even old concert flyers. Clara's heart twisted as she passed them. As Eli unlatched the storm door, a voice crackled from the shadows. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." They both froze. From the far corner of the basement, a small light flicked on, revealing a young woman with short dark hair, holding a phone. Her eyes were sharp, her stance ready. Eli's voice came out stunned. "Who are you?" The woman raised her hand. "Easy. My name is Dana Trout. I'm with a federal task force. I've been tracking Silas and his crew for 3 years." Clara's eyes widened. "You're with the police?" "Better," Dana said with a quick glance toward the stairs. "But if you want to live, we don't have much time. They're already inside." Eli hesitated. "How did you find us?" "I've been following Clara since the tavern drop," Dana answered. "Silas has her under watch, but I've been watching them. I need your help to bring this down." Just then, the basement door creaked open. Heavy footsteps echoed from above. Dana's voice dropped to a whisper. "There's a safe house nearby. But you have to trust me." "Now." Clara looked at Eli. "At the storm door." "At the stairs." Then she nodded. "Let's go." And they vanished into the night. The car sped through the back roads of the city, weaving between empty warehouses and dimly lit alleys. Clara sat in the back seat, clutching her purse like it was a shield. Beside her, Eli stared out the window, tense and silent. Agent Dana Trout drove fast but focused, her eyes scanning every turn. She didn't speak until they reached a rusted gate at the edge of an old, industrial park. The gate creaked open slowly as a security camera turned toward them. "No names, no phones, and no windows open," Dana said firmly. "We're ghosts from here on out." The car pulled into a fenced yard behind a metal building. Inside, the safe house was surprisingly clean, plain walls, old furniture, but warm. The scent of coffee and disinfectant filled the air. Clara glanced around, her nerves still rattled. "Is this place safe?" she asked softly. "As safe as it gets," Dana replied, locking 3 deadbolts behind them. "We rotate locations every week. No one knows where we are unless I tell them." Clara lowered herself onto the couch, exhausted. Eli stood nearby, watching Dana with a mix of suspicion and hope. "Why are you helping us?" he asked. "You don't even know us." Dana leaned against the wall and crossed her arms. "Because I've seen what Silas does to people like you. I've seen good men disappear. Whole families ruined. And your story, your band, the bus, the disappearances, it never made sense to me. I've followed that trail for years." She opened a folder and laid out photos on the table, images of the recovered tour bus, skeletal remains, bullet casings, and grainy surveillance shots of Silas. "I believe this whole operation, Silas, your brother Jasper, the drugs, the cover-up, it all started with the disappearance of the electric howl." Clara's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the photos. "So many lives wasted." Dana nodded. "But it's not over yet. Landon's still alive. And if we move fast, we might be able to get him back." Eli leaned closer. "How?" Dana pulled out a blueprint of an old shipyard. "That's where they're keeping him now. We have a narrow window to act." Clara's heart jumped. "Then what are we waiting for?" Dana met her eyes. "We move at dawn." For the first time in 22 years, Clara had hope. But hope was only the beginning. The sun hadn't risen yet when Dana handed Clara and Eli each a dark hoodie and a small earpiece. "This place is crawling with cameras," she said as they climbed into a black van parked behind the safe house. "Once we're inside, we move fast. No hesitation. No noise." Clara's hands trembled as she pulled the hoodie over her head. She wasn't built for this. She was a school librarian, not a spy. But her son was out there, hurt, maybe dying, and she wouldn't let fear stop her now. Eli sat beside her, silent but alert. His jaw was clenched, eyes scanning the map Dana laid on the dashboard. The shipyard's been abandoned for years, Dana explained, pointing to a long warehouse on the blueprint. But Silas's crew uses it to hide what they don't want the world to see. We've tracked medical supplies, unregistered shipments, even body bags going in. Clara's stomach turned. They've moved Landon there recently. I have an inside contact who confirmed it. He's in the northwest wing, under heavy guard. Is he conscious? Clara asked, afraid of the answer. Dana shook her head. No. Still in a coma. But alive. Clara closed her eyes, whispering a prayer. 20 minutes later, they pulled up a block from the shipyard. Dana gave them each a small flashlight and a warning. If anything goes wrong, we scatter and meet back at the safe house. Don't look back. They moved through the shadows like ghosts. The warehouse loomed ahead, a giant skeleton of steel and secrets. Faint light shone through cracks in the boarded-up windows. Clara's heart beat in her throat. Inside, the warehouse smelled like rust, oil, and mold. The floor groaned beneath their steps. Dana led the way, her gun drawn, her eyes sharp. They passed through a corridor lined with crates marked in foreign languages. A low hum echoed from the far end. Then they saw it, a metal door with a keypad lock. Dana stepped forward and quickly punched in a code. The door clicked open. Beyond it was a makeshift hospital room. A single bed. Machines beeping. And lying motionless in that bed, hooked up to wires and monitors, was Landon. Clara gasped. Landon! Suddenly, a voice rang out behind them. Well. Look who finally showed up. They turned. Silas stood in the doorway, a gun in his hand and a cruel grin on his face. Silas stepped into the room, his gun gleaming under the flickering overhead light. His men followed, 3 of them, all dressed in black, all armed. Dana instantly raised her weapon, but Silas smirked and waved a hand. Easy, Agent Trout, he said smoothly. You wouldn't want to start a gunfight in front of a coma patient, would you? Clara moved closer to Landon's bedside, her hands trembling. His face was pale, his eyes closed, but his chest rose and fell, proof that he was still breathing. Still fighting. Eli stepped in front of Clara protectively. Leave her out of this, Silas. Silas ignored him. His eyes were locked on Clara. You've caused me quite a bit of trouble, Mrs. Winslow. Taking what doesn't belong to you. Snooping around. He's my son, Clara said, voice shaky but firm. He was never yours. Silas laughed coldly. Oh, he was mine the moment Jasper sold him. Your brother made a deal, and Landon paid the price. You all did. At the mention of Jasper, Clara's heart twisted with grief and fury. Where is he? She demanded. Where's Jasper? Silas's smile faded. Let's just say your dear brother got what was coming to him when he tried to run. Dana stepped forward, gun still raised. You're done, Silas. You're surrounded. My team has the perimeter locked. You won't leave this place. Silas turned to her slowly. If that were true, you'd have stormed in by now. No backup. Just 3 broken people trying to play hero. Then, suddenly, Clara stepped between him and Landon, shielding her son with her body. You can kill me, she said, her voice rising. But I'm not moving. You won't hurt him again. Silas raised his gun toward her. Don't tempt me. But then, boom. A flash bang exploded just outside the doorway. A wave of white light and deafening sound knocked the guards off balance. Silas staggered back, dropping his weapon. Dana lunged forward and tackled him, pinning him to the ground. Armed agents swarmed the room, yelling commands. FBI! Hands in the air! The guards surrendered as Clara dropped to her knees beside Landon. She gripped his hand tightly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It's over," Dana said, handcuffing Silas. "He's safe now." But Clara knew it wasn't truly over. Not until her son opened his eyes. The warehouse was now flooded with agents. Red and blue lights flashed through the broken windows, casting eerie shadows across the floor. Clara sat at Landon's side, her hands still wrapped tightly around his. He was so still. Too still. Machines beeped softly beside him, monitoring a life that teetered on the edge. An EMT moved quickly, checking Landon's vitals and adjusting his oxygen. "Is he going to make it?" Clara asked, her voice barely a whisper. The medic looked at her with tired eyes. "He's stable for now. But he needs hospital care. Fast." Clara nodded, brushing a lock of hair from Landon's forehead. "Hold on, baby. Just hold on." Eli stood nearby, arms crossed, bruises on his face from the scuffle. He'd fought hard, risked everything to get Clara this far. He now looked more exhausted than angry. Dana came over, her jacket dusty, face smeared with dirt and sweat. "Silas is in custody. His men too. We got the files, the records, everything. With luck, we'll get the rest of the network." Clara blinked slowly. "What about Jasper?" Dana's eyes softened. "We found what was left of him. Looks like Silas had him eliminated weeks ago. His greed cost a lot of lives, Clara, but I'm sorry you had to lose your brother like that." Clara didn't respond. Her emotions were too tangled, grief, rage, sorrow, and relief all mixed together. She didn't know what to feel, except that she wanted her son back. An ambulance backed into the warehouse, sirens silenced, lights flashing. Paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. Carefully, they lifted Landon, keeping him connected to the machines. Clara followed closely, refusing to let go of his hand. As they wheeled him toward the ambulance, she whispered to him the whole way. "You're safe now. I'm here. Just keep fighting." As the doors shut behind them and the vehicle pulled away, Clara sat beside him, still clutching his hand. And for the first time in 22 years she prayed out loud. She didn't pray for justice, or revenge, or even peace. She prayed for one small miracle. "Please," she whispered through tears. "Just come back to me." Outside, the sky was beginning to lighten. Dawn was coming. But inside the ambulance, time stood still. The hospital was quiet, the hallways dim and still. Machines hummed in the background, and nurses moved like shadows between rooms. Clara sat beside Landon's bed, holding his hand as if it might slip away if she let go. He hadn't woken up. Not yet. She'd been sitting there for hours, maybe longer, watching the rise and fall of his chest, the soft beep of the heart monitor, the pale light on his face. His body was bruised and bandaged. He looked older, tired, but still her boy. Eli sat in the corner of the room, flipping through a hospital magazine but not really reading it. He kept glancing at the door, as if expecting someone to burst in again. Agent Dana had left an hour ago, promising to return with news from headquarters. Clara still wasn't sure if she trusted her completely, but there was something steady about the woman, something strong. Clara had clung to that strength when hers was running out. Clara's eyes drifted to the photo in her lap. It was the last picture she had of the electric howl before they vanished. Landon was smiling, his arm around Ricky, both of them laughing like they had all the time in the world. It had been 22 years since that photo was taken, but it felt like yesterday. She traced Landon's face with her finger. "Where did you go?" she whispered. Eli leaned forward. "They found something else," he said quietly. "A second van. Burned. Hidden near the shoreline. There were bones, they think it was Ricky." Clara's throat tightened. She remembered Ricky's laugh. He had called her Mama C and always complimented her cooking. "Oh, Ricky. I think they tried to run," Eli continued. Maybe they were trying to escape Silas, and only Landon made it. Clara looked at her son, guilt rising like a wave. He didn't deserve this. None of you did, Eli said softly. The room fell into silence again, only the monitor keeping time. Then, suddenly, Landon's fingers twitched. Clara's breath caught. She leaned forward, gripping his hand tighter. His eyelids fluttered. A slow groan escaped his lips. Landon? She whispered, tears already spilling. Baby, can you hear me? His eyes opened. Just a sliver. But it was enough. Landon's eyes fluttered open again, this time wider. The hospital room seemed too bright, the beeping of the machines suddenly too loud. He squinted, struggling to focus. Clara leaned in, tears streaming freely. Landon, it's me. Mom. His lips moved, but no sound came out. His throat was too dry, too raw from days, maybe weeks, of tubes and silence. His brow furrowed with confusion, pain, and something deeper, fear. Don't try to talk, Clara whispered, brushing his hair back gently. You're safe now. I'm here. Eli hit the call button on the wall, and within seconds, a nurse came rushing in. Her eyes widened as she saw Landon awake. He's conscious, Eli said urgently. He's awake. The nurse nodded and called for the doctor, then checked Landon's vitals while murmuring soft reassurances. You're doing great, sweetheart. Just relax. Landon's gaze darted around the room, settling first on the machines, then the nurse, then Eli, and finally, back to Clara. He blinked, and a tear rolled down his cheek. Clara kissed his forehead, holding his hand like it was the most fragile thing in the world. The doctor came in moments later, examined him quickly, and nodded. He's stable. Still weak, but coming out of the coma. This is a very good sign. Clara let out the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Is he going to be okay? We'll need to monitor him closely, the doctor said. There could be memory gaps, maybe some confusion. But right now, this is a miracle. As the doctor and nurse left to update the charts, Clara turned back to Landon. His lips moved again. She leaned closer. What is it, baby? This time, she heard it. Just one broken, cracked word. Mom! Clara gasped and nodded, her face crumpling with emotion. Yes, I'm here. I never stopped looking for you. Never. Landon's eyes closed again, only for a moment, as if the effort to speak had drained him. When they opened, there was something else in them now, a flicker of fear, maybe guilt. He tried again. Rick. Clara nodded, already knowing. I know, sweetheart. Landon's voice was hoarse, barely audible. But as he gripped her hand, Clara understood. The past wasn't finished with him yet. And Landon still had a story to tell. The hospital lights hummed overhead as Clara sat by Landon's side, watching him sleep again. He'd drifted off only minutes after speaking her name. The strain had been too much, but she clung to that one precious word, Mom. It meant he remembered her. That he was still in there. Dana arrived with a file in her hand and her usual sharp expression. She glanced at Landon, then at Clara. He spoke? Clara nodded. Just a little. He said my name. Then, he said Rick. Dana exhaled and sat beside her. That fits what we found. Clara turned tense. What do you mean? Dana opened the file slowly. Inside were photographs, charred bones, a burned van, melted metal fused with guitar strings. Clara covered her mouth. This was found near the cliffs where the band vanished. We believe Ricky tried to help Landon escape. They were running, hiding, and someone tracked them down. Silas, Clara whispered. Dana nodded. Most likely. But there's more. This van had no fingerprints, no DNA. Someone cleaned it, then set it on fire. But they missed one thing. She slid a plastic evidence bag across the table. Inside was a dog tag, bent, blackened by fire. The name was barely visible, but Clara could make it out. R. Velez. Ricky, she murmured, her heart sinking. He didn't make it. No. But he tried, Dana said gently. He bought Landon enough time to disappear. That's how he ended up on that shipyard floor. Clara sat back, feeling the weight of it all. He was just a kid. They all were, Dana said. Kids caught in a web of greed and violence spun by people they trusted. Clara looked at her son again, brushing his cheek with the back of her hand. Do you think Landon knew what was happening? That Jasper, my own brother, sold them out? Dana's eyes narrowed. He might not have known everything, but he knew enough to be afraid. And he kept running. That tells me he wasn't one of them. Silence filled the room. A silence loaded with grief, regret, and truth. Then, softly, Landon stirred. Clara leaned in, her heart pounding. His eyes opened, and this time, they were clearer. Sharper. Rick, he saved me, Landon whispered. But someone else, someone worse, is still out there. Clara froze. Who, Landon? She asked gently. Landon looked her in the eye. Uncle Jasper wasn't working alone. The hospital room grew colder as Clara digested Landon's words. Uncle Jasper wasn't working alone? The thought chilled her to the bone. She looked at Landon, whose face was pale but determined. What do you mean, baby? Who else was involved? Landon struggled to speak, his voice weak but steady. There's someone higher up. Someone who planned everything from the start. Clara's mind raced. Jasper had been the family's secret, but if there was another player, the web of betrayal was deeper than she'd imagined. Dana stepped in quietly. Landon, take your time. Tell us what you remember. Landon closed his eyes, trying to piece together the fog in his mind. It wasn't just drugs, it was control. Money. Power. Jasper was just a pawn. Clara's hands clenched into fists. A pawn for who? Landon's eyes flickered open. Edric. Clara's heart skipped a beat. The name hit her like a blow. Edric Canvo, the man who had held her hostage, forced her into selling drugs, and threatened her life. How is Edric involved? Clara whispered, fear and anger mixing in her voice. Landon's breath hitched. He's the real leader, the one who made the deals, the one who killed the band members. Clara's mind flashed back to the tour bus sunk in the ocean, the mystery of the missing bandmates, and the gunshot wounds on the recovered bodies. It all made sense now. Eli leaned forward, voice steady. If Edric's behind this, that means he's still out there, running things. Dana nodded grimly. And dangerous. We have to move fast. Clara squeezed Landon's hand, feeling a fierce protectiveness rise inside her. She wouldn't let Edric hurt her family anymore. Landon, she said softly. We'll stop him. Together. Landon managed a faint smile. I'm tired, but I want to help. Clara's eyes filled with tears. We'll get you better first. Then we fight. Outside the hospital window, shadows lengthened as the sun set, reminding them that the darkest battles were still ahead. But for the first time, Clara felt a spark of hope. The family's secrets were unraveling, and they were ready to face the shadows. The air in the hospital hallway was thick with tension. Dana paced outside Landon's room, phone pressed to her ear, her voice low and urgent. Yes, confirm the last known address. I want eyes on Canvo now. He's back on the radar. She hung up and turned to Clara, who stood nearby, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Edric Canvo's been off-grid for weeks, Dana said. But now that Landon's confirmed he's the head of the organization, we've got enough to issue a federal warrant. Clara's face hardened. He needs to pay. Eli, leaning against the wall with bruised arms folded, nodded. After everything he's done, he will. Inside the room, Landon rested quietly, but his eyes were open and alert. His memory was returning in fragments, slow, painful pieces. Each memory brought more clarity, and more horror. He remembered Edric's voice, cold and calm, ordering Ricky to be dealt with. He remembered the panic of running, the night Ricky threw himself between Landon and the gunman. And worst of all, he remembered the moment his Uncle Jasper handed him over to Edric like he was nothing more than a package. "I was just a way to move product," Landon had said quietly. "We all were." Now Dana was organizing a team to move in. Satellite images had picked up a boat registered under one of Edric's fake companies docked near an old marina just outside town. "He's planning to flee," she told Clara. "Probably international waters. If he makes it to open sea, we'll lose him." "Then don't let him get that far," Clara replied, eyes blazing. Eli cracked his knuckles. "We'll help however we can." Dana hesitated. "This is dangerous." Clara stepped closer, her voice low but firm. "He took my son. Burned his future. Killed innocent people. I'm not sitting this one out." Dana studied her, then gave a sharp nod. "Suit up. We move at dawn." Later that night, Clara sat with Landon once more. She kissed his forehead gently. "I'm going to make sure he never hurts anyone again," she whispered. Landon's eyes found hers, glassy but clear. "Be careful, Mom." "I will," she said, holding his hand. As the first light of morning crept over the city, Clara stood with the team, heart steady, ready to face the monster who had haunted them for decades. This time, the hunter would become the hunted. The sky was still dark when Clara stepped out of the black SUV. A cold wind whipped in from the sea, carrying the smell of salt and diesel fuel. The marina was quiet, too quiet. In the distance, a large rusted boat rocked slowly in the water, its deck lights faint, flickering. That was the one. Edric Canvo's escape plan. Agent Dana Trude gave a series of hand signals. Her team fanned out across the docks, weapons drawn, radios buzzing with whispers. Clara stood just behind Dana, wearing a bulletproof vest over her jacket. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes were sharp. This was it. Eli crouched beside her, holding binoculars. "There's movement on the boat. 2 men on the deck, maybe more inside." Dana checked her earpiece. "We go in clean. No gunfire unless absolutely necessary. Clara, stay behind me at all times." Clara nodded, jaw clenched. They moved swiftly down the dock, boots silent against the old wood. As they neared the boat, one of Edric's men stepped out. He froze when he saw them, but before he could reach for his weapon, he was tackled and restrained. The operation was in motion. Dana led the charge up the boarding ramp. "FBI! Hands in the air!" Inside the cabin, chaos exploded. A man tried to slam the door shut, but Eli kicked it open. Another goon lunged, but Dana struck him down with a quick blow to the jaw. Clara followed, her eyes scanning the shadows. And then she saw him. Edric Canvo stood at the back of the boat, calm as ever, his pale eyes locked on hers. "Well, well," he said, smiling. "Mama Bear found her claws." Clara stepped forward, heart racing. "It's over, Edric. You're done." He raised his hands slowly, but not in surrender. "Do you really think this ends with me? You have no idea how deep this goes." "Try us," Dana said, stepping beside Clara, gun aimed at Edric's chest. But Edric just smiled. And then he did something no one expected. He threw a small metal device on the floor. A flashbang. Clara barely had time to scream before the world went white and her ears filled with a piercing ring. When her vision cleared, Edric was gone. The back of the boat was empty, and a speedboat was already racing into the open sea. He had escaped again. For now. The echo of the flashbang still rang in Clara's ears as she staggered against the cabin wall. The boat rocked violently beneath her feet, but she forced herself to stay upright. "Edric's escaping!" she shouted, her voice hoarse. Dana blinked through the blinding afterimage and turned toward the back of the boat. The speedboat was already halfway to open water, its engine roaring like a beast in the dark. Two silhouettes sat inside, Edric and a driver. "Don't let him get away!" Dana barked into her radio. "We need pursuit now!" On the far end of the dock, an FBI patrol boat roared to life. Eli jumped on board, waving for Clara to follow. "Come on!" Without thinking, she ran, her legs pumping hard despite the ache in her muscles. She leaped onto the boat just as it launched into the waves, Dana right behind her. The chase had begun. Salt water sprayed into the air as the FBI vessel tore through the harbor, closing the distance with the fleeing speedboat. Clara gripped the railing, wind whipping her hair back, eyes locked on the shrinking figure of Edric. He turned once, glanced over his shoulder, and smiled. "He's not even afraid," she muttered. "He thinks he'll win." Dana crouched beside her, holding binoculars. "He's used to power. Used to control. People like Edric don't believe they can lose." "He's wrong," Clara growled. "This ends tonight." Up ahead, the speedboat swerved, trying to lose them behind a rocky outcrop. Eli steered hard, keeping pace, expertly navigating through the tight path between jagged sea walls. Suddenly, Edric's boat began to slow. Smoke curled from its engine. Something was wrong. "He's stalling out!" Dana shouted. Clara's heart jumped. "Now's our chance!" The FBI boat pulled alongside, bumping against the side of Edric's vessel. Dana and Eli jumped aboard first, guns drawn. Clara followed, her eyes searching wildly. The driver was already restrained. But Edric was gone. Then she heard it, a splash. She turned and saw him in the water, swimming toward a floating buoy, where a black bag waited. "He's got another escape plan!" Dana yelled. Clara didn't hesitate. She dove in. The cold bit into her skin like knives, but she swam hard, every stroke fueled by fury, by grief, by years of pain. She reached Edric just as he unzipped the bag. He turned, shocked to see her. "This is for my son!" Clara screamed. And she slammed her fist into his face. The ocean swirled around them, waves crashing in all directions. Clara's fist connected with Edric's jaw, sending him tumbling backward into the freezing water. He sputtered and growled, reaching out to grab her arm, but she kicked hard, breaking free. "You're done, Edric!" she shouted, treading water, fury burning in her chest. Edric's face twisted with rage. "You think this changes anything? I built an empire. You're nothing." "Maybe," Clara said, chest heaving. "But I have something you never will: love. Family. Truth." Edric lunged at her again, but before he could reach her, a powerful beam of light swept across the waves. The FBI patrol boat was circling back. Dana stood at the edge, gun pointed down. "Don't move, Canvo!" she shouted. Edric froze for a moment, then made a sudden dive toward the buoy, grabbing the black escape bag. Clara shouted, "He's got something in there!" Dana didn't wait. She fired a warning shot into the water. That was enough. Edric stopped. Two agents dove in and tackled him. Within moments he was dragged onto the patrol boat, soaked, coughing, defeated. Clara was helped aboard next, wrapped in a thick blanket as she collapsed onto the deck, gasping. It was over. For real this time. As Edric was cuffed and shoved into a holding cell below deck, Dana opened the black escape bag. Inside were multiple passports, stacks of foreign cash, a handgun, and a flash drive. "This'll help take down everyone he worked with," Dana said, locking it up. "He didn't just run a drug ring. This guy was part of a whole network." Clara stared at the ocean, watching the sunrise. Orange light spilled across the waves, warm and calm. After all these years, after all the pain, there was peace. Back at the hospital, Landon was awake, stronger. When Clara returned to his room later that morning, he smiled for the first time in days. Did you get him? He asked, voice weak but hopeful. She nodded, tears welling up. I did. We all did. He reached for her hand. Thank you, Mom. No, she said softly, brushing his hair back. Thank you, for surviving. Outside the window, life moved on. Slowly. Quietly. But justice had been served. And the music, once drowned beneath the waves, was finally heard again.